Thank you very much indeed. I have got a speech I was going to read out. It will be available on our website, but it's always the way when you come and you hear the speakers this morning, you're much more interested in actually responding and building on what they've said in your own little thoughts. So we'll provide a hyperlink to our website, and anybody who wants to read the carefully crafted speech, which means I didn't write it, you can perfectly do that. But I think the key things were all raised this morning, but the linkage between them and the relative weight that needs to be placed on those if we're going to have what is so clearly lacking at the moment, which is a proportionate and coherent strategy to go about eradicating fuel poverty, still weren't there. A little bit on the scale, because I think it was mentioned quite rightly that the latest formal figures that we have for the scale of fuel poverty in Wales is about 250,000 households, but I think that's the 2006 figure. You know, where are we now? We're much closer to 300,000 households spending more than 10% of their income on heat and light now, and was very, very clear that there's more to come, a huge amount more to come. Yesterday, and today the papers have picked up on it, gas was trading at £1.13 a therm. The barrel of oil was $144 a barrel. I don't expect people to know and you shouldn't know, for God's sake, you shouldn't have to think about what price per therm of gas is being traded at. But that is a huge rise upon where we were a few months ago. The DTI now put out some figures a couple of years ago saying actually the production costs, how much gas costs to get out of the ground, out from underneath the sea and pipe it, is about 20-30p per therm. So we're well in excess of that. That is going to be registered on consumer bills up to 40% by the end of the year, and more to come in 2009. The true scale at the moment is about 300,000 households in Wales, about 4.5 million households across GB. That's going to get stratospheric come the end of this year. Some people are talking about 6 million households across Britain in fuel poverty. You're getting to a quarter of all households. It's no longer a niche issue. It's no longer an issue just of the poorest in society. It's going to become most people's experience of being an energy consumer. So the scale is frightening. It's intimidating. And partly that intimidation of that scale and the challenge of trying to be proportionate and respond to that scale has led to, I have to say it, politicians and regulators and energy companies just being rabbits in their headlights. And those headlights may have gone full beam, they're arc lights. They are quite blinding. And it's easy to understand why it's difficult to get a proportionate strategy. But we do have these targets, not only targets in statute, but real moral targets to do whatever we can to eradicate fuel poverty. And I suppose the few comments I want to make today are we're a long way from having that proportionate and coherent strategy to even start the job of trying to eradicate fuel poverty. But very helpfully, some of the speakers this morning have already kind of pointed some of the ways, and it's about putting the right weight on those measures and kind of matching the way forward. And I think Richard made a key point, which is the way we went about undertaking the job of tackling fuel poverty in the early 2000s, at a time when incomes were going up and a time when prices were low, hasn't dramatically changed. It hasn't dramatically changed even though the average gas bill has gone up by 109% in the past 5 years. We haven't thought our way through what it is we need to do to tackle this high price environment, and an environment that's getting higher. That's one of the first things. We don't have a proportionate strategy. Nick made the point, and again it's a very good one, that the social issues have brought some sort of matching of the environmental and the economic issues. Well, to the extent that they have, that's good, but there's a huge extent to which they haven't. You often see from politicians and from commentators and from the industry, it's not a fuel poverty, it's not an energy problem, it's a poverty problem. And you hear from a lot of people, the solutions to fuel poverty, they're not poverty solutions, they're energy efficiency solutions. There is the potential for the three pillars of why fuel poverty exists: high prices, incomes that don't match it, poor energy efficient housing stock. Those three things are often used to negate each other and to work against them. We don't have this properly holistic a way forward that brings all of them together. So to the extent that those three pillars of sustainability, social, environmental and economic, are together, that's a way forward. To the extent to which they are still falling apart from each other, are not performing the job of really keeping us focused on what the measures should be, they're failing. And I think we have to recognise they're failing. Why has fuel poverty increased to the extent that it has? Well, fuel poverty numbers decreased quite dramatically in the early 2000s. The reasons why we are in free fall in terms of fuel poverty is purely and simply because energy bills have gone up to such an extent that our income measures and our energy efficiency measures have got no chance of keeping pace with them. They have outstripped them to a dramatic extent. Why has that happened? If you ask any supplier or government or regulator, actually even if you were to ask me why energy prices have gone up so much, I would say it's the wholesale price of gas. The global commodity issue which is determining the extent to which our bills go up and the speed with which they go up. But it's the wholesale price of gas, not the wholesale cost of gas. The cost of getting gas out of the ground and out of the sea and piping it to the UK hasn't dramatically changed. There is no shortage of gas. There is no supply and demand constraints, particularly on gas. There are no market fundamentals that say gas should be trading at £1.13 a therm instead of 20p a therm. The reason why it is because the gas that we buy from the continent, and made this point very, very forcefully, is linked to the price of oil. There is what EnergyWatch think is a toxic link between the price of gas, which domestic consumers use to heat their homes, and the price of oil, which we know what's happening to the price of oil. So it's just a way, in context, the broad context of saying why we must do whatever we can and take responsibility where we can to ensure that our individual organisations and governments do whatever they can to address the symptoms of fuel poverty, housing stock, people's incomes, inability to afford their bill. We cannot just step back and ignore the fact that there are fundamental market structural issues which are the reason why our bills have gone up in the first place. And I think there is a reluctance, a reticence, a complacency from governments about it's too difficult to tackle. I mean, that's the reason for it, but let's not go there because it's too difficult. And the first thing I think EnergyWatch will always say at these sort of events, even when the focus of the event is on energy efficiency and what housing associations can do to make life better for their tenants, is you cannot allow government to get off the hook about the cause of bills going up and the actions they should put in place to address those fundamental flaws. I wanted to pick up on two things particularly because I think they relate specifically to housing associations. The Minister said an outcome of the Ofgem Fuel Poverty Summit and discussions that she's having directly with energy companies are about things that energy companies can do to improve the situation. Actually, I think it could be put slightly differently, what energy companies can do to stop making the situation worse. One of the issues that we've always had in the energy market is that there is a tendency for the poor to pay more. There is a disproportionate number, actually, where there are more people per head in Wales on a prepayment meter. There are more tenants in housing association stock on prepayment meter than in other forms of housing provision. Scandalous situation is that those consumers pay on average about £160 more for the same amount of energy from the same supplier than they would do if they were on an online tariff, if they had a bank account and access to home broadband and the confidence to do those sorts of things. There is some element of additional cost there for those customers, but not £160. If a housing association tenant in South Wales hadn't changed their supplier, was on a prepayment meter with the old gas incumbent British Gas and was with Swaleg on a prepayment electricity meter, they could be looking to pay, on average, £321 more for the same. Now, I'm all for productive and positive dialogue with companies to see what more they can do, but the first thing is stop making it worse. Stop exacerbating the issue for the fuel poor, for the most vulnerable people in society by charging them a premium price for a worse service. 1,000 prepayment meters are imposed upon consumers in Britain every day to recover debt. That's hundreds of consumers who are paying a higher tariff than they would do on an online or a direct debit tariff to recover debt, exacerbating the situation. The provision of social tariffs from energy suppliers, some are very good. Some, I think, it's hardwired into their culture to do what they can to be socially responsible, to try and beat their competitors in terms of their social conscience and making that real in terms of the bill that consumers have to pay. Some pay it lip service.